what's this? I'm back in front of my computer, and there's multiple boxes in front of me with my friends in them? That means it must be a PetaPixel podcast this week, right, guys?
Yeah, it could just be that we're not in the car anymore. Like, yeah, we're back in Calgary. That makes complete logical sense.
It feels like I haven't done a podcast in a while, but we did do one last week. It's just the car cast. I think I was borderline delirious from the Apple event and same day edit.
Right.
And
that was hard.
Like, I listened to that podcast and I'm like, I have no recollection of any of this happening. So it was exciting for me. I was like a new listener last week. So it was good fun. How y'all doing?
Okay. Actually, a little bit delirious after the Apple event, not just the launch, but then actually getting our video out. We're going to talk about that a little bit today.
It was a massive lift getting that thing out in fairly short time. But we'll definitely talk about it a little bit later. But, I want our audience to know you and me, as well as I know you and me. So I always like to kick it off with a question. So, guys, I'm curious. What was your first smartphone? Not like a flip phone, none of that. I'm talking something that you could play Angry Birds on. What was it?
I don't think Angry Birds existed when I got my first smartphone, but you go first, Chris.
I honestly don't remember. I was a really late adopter, actually, to smartphones.
That's what I was curious about. Yeah, I feel like you did it 10 years after everyone else.
Yeah, everybody else was talking about how great smartphones were, and I was being like, nah, I don't need that. And I probably should have listened to myself because that was wisdom. It's destroyed our brains now. So it was probably like an HTC One, something like that. We're going way back, but there was lots of phones out before that I totally ignored. And I just used like flip phones.
And what made you're just like, damn it, okay, I'm going to get one. What was the tipping point for you
honestly,
of being culturally irrelevant?
I think it was I think it was just I wanted to have like music and not have to carry a separate MP3 player. And so the HTC One had like pretty good speakers from Beats Audio or something. I don't know. Like, you're asking me to go way back. Like, I don't know if my kids were being born. My first sons were being born. Like, it was way back. So yeah, I don't know. But that's probably what it was. Music without having to have a separate device, I think, was what it was.
That was a big deal for me. I was a flip phone iPod guy for a very long time, like one in each pocket. I know how to grab one out of. I know which one they're in. I had it all together. But the iPhone 4 was my first smartphone, so it was pretty early. I mean, I think the 3S was the first one to come to Canada. It was a long time until we actually saw those. So I know my buddy Adam Moudry went down to the States and got an original iPod, which made him the coolest person in Canada. And he had an HD DVD player at the same time. And we're just like, damn, this guy's got it made. Yeah, he figured it all out.
They were stupid
expensive. It did take me a while. And honestly, for me, it was just the same thing. I'm just like, I don't want to carry an iPod and a flip phone. So I combined the two and then became a slave to all kinds of different fun algorithms. What about you, Jaron?
Here in America, for a very long time, the iPhone was not available outside of AT&T. So as a Verizon guy, and have been forever, I didn't have the option to get an iPhone, even if I wanted one. So my very first smartphone I got in 2010. I remember this. I had to Google it because I had forgotten exactly what model, but I found it while you guys were talking. It's the Motorola Droid X. That was my first.
Wow.
And that was fine at the time, but it aged so fast. So a lot of those Android phones, at least early on, they could not handle software updates as they rolled out. So they would just progressively get worse, like notably worse for a while. So this was my only smartphone that wasn't an iPhone ever.
And then you went Apple.
I just
looked up the HTC One, the M7 model. That was 2013, which makes sense.
Yeah, 11 years. That seems in line.
Yeah, that was pretty late then. Actually, that's a pretty late adopter. Yeah, so I waited a long time.
Let me see if you guys know this one, or anyone listening might enjoy this. Before I got a real, in quotes, smartphone, I had one of those crossover smartphones. So that wasn't quite smart, but it also wasn't like a dumb phone either. It's the LG Voyager.
It's like there's such a history
I have no
there.
Recollection of this.
So ancient stuff.
It was thick, and it featured a hinge on it, so it flipped open, and there was another screen on the inside and a keyboard. and that was what I used for a while. And it looks like a mini boombox is the design. So it's got like a screen with like
rules.
2 speakers on the outsides of it, and then when you opened it, it replicated that same look.
Did you ever put it on your shoulder and just walk around?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Because some 3M adhesive and prop it upright.
Looking right now, in 2007, CNET gave that an 8.3 out of 10.
Damn!
Top tier phone.
Damn, good choice, Jaron. Good choice.
Only the best for Jaron. Speaking of only the best, we got only the best news stories this week because we had to be picky. So much happened. We were just throwing some of those news stories away. I'm not even going to rattle off all of them, but I am going to say
many.
The main thing that we're going to be talking about is we got some new red LUTs. I have been testing them. I have opinions. Jaron and Chris have seen them as well. They're going to be dropping some thoughts. And we got to talk about a little bit more iPhone stuff. Obviously, that was the big news last week, but tons of news stories, and we're going to try and slog through tech support we didn't get to while we were in a car last week. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
You know, before you read our wonderful sponsor, I do want to call out that our coffee-making travel man, Michael Bonacore, he is turning 45 years old today. Today, as in, like, as you're listening to this, we're recording the day before he turns 45. So I just wanted to shout out, happy birthday, Michael Bonacore. You're halfway to 90.
Damn, he's like slightly, just like a couple weeks older than me. That's insane.
But he still has like the youthful enthusiasm to be like, we should probably just do 17-hour days for a week straight.
That's no kids.
So,
that's called
incredible.
No kids.
Yeah.
That's called no kids. Yeah.
That was happy birthday, Michael. Hey, let's do an ad, guys. So today we're excited to highlight a lens that's truly a game changer for wildlife and nature photographers, the OM System ED 150 to 600 millimeter f5 to 6.3 IS. If you're passionate about capturing distant subjects with incredible clarity, this lens will be your new best friend, just like Michael Bonacore. Except he's not, because now the lens is my new best friend. Sorry, Michael.
It replaced
the M.Zuiko ED 150 to 600 mil. It's designed for those who demand performance, versatility, and quality. It features a powerful zoom range that lets you get up close to your subject, whether you're shooting wildlife, nature, or even the moon. With its advanced optical design, this lens ensures sharpness across the entire zoom range. It also incorporates a high-performance image stabilization system that compensates for camera shake, allowing you to shoot handheld with confidence, even at longer focal lengths. And because this is an OM lens, that works with the amazing IBIS in the camera bodies. The M.Zuiko ED 150 to 600 millimeter f5.6 to 6.3 IS is also built to withstand the elements with a weather-sealed construction that ensures durability in challenging conditions. So if you're in the field experiencing challenging weather conditions, hey, it's up for the challenge. Challengers was a good movie. The incredible autofocus system of the M.Zuiko ED 150 to 600 mil from OM System is fast and accurate. I'm going to let you guys talk soon, helping you capture every moment with precision. This lens truly expands your photographic possibilities. Anything to add there, guys?
It's a great lens for proving the Earth is flat. 100%.
Oh, easy. Yeah. So check out the new M.Zuiko ED 150 to 600 millimeter f5 to 6.3 IS. Now through September 29th, it's $400 off. Normally it's $2,700. Now it's just $2,300 US. Visit explore.omsystem.com/PetaPixel or your local authorized retailer to check it out now.
Wow.
Thanks
Did
to
you
OM
choose
System.
that 'cause it's got game? Yeah, thank you, OM System. Did you choose that ad read, Jordan? You want to do it today because it's got game changer in it? Because I feel like you always end up doing the OM ad reads when it says game changer or powerhouse or beast or whatever. Like, 100% of the time.
I've got real like monster truck announcer energy. We're going to talk about that later. So I think that's why I always step up for those ones.
Like I disagree because a monster truck announcer would be like challenge. But you were like challenge. Lots of challenges. Challenger was a good movie.
I mean, that's just a frequency issue.
Okay, whatever. I respect you. I just disagree with your okay. Anyways,
do we get to critique each other's ad reads every week now?
Yes, I think that'd be hilarious.
Certainly can.
Wow.
I felt like your energy dipped down a little bit when you were talking about optical design. You know, like you're getting a little bit more monotone. All right.
It's a good lens, really good for birding and stuff.
All right. Well, I will link to you guys reviewed that lens, as I recall, so I'll link it down in the description below if anyone wants to see their review of it. But if you hadn't already, I'd be absurd if you're listening to this podcast and haven't watched all of their videos multiple times. But in case you missed it, I'll put it there. But we're going to move on to our gigantic list of news stories today. That's basically what we're doing. We're reading news and talking about a lot of stuff. So let's start it with the Leica M11D, which was announced on the 12th. I have a feeling were we together when this announced, or at least traveling?
I think we were. Yeah. No, I think we were traveling.
Yeah,
we were back, I think.
Yeah, but busy. So here, the M11D, it's a 60 megapixel M mount digital rangefinder, but there's something special about it, or maybe not special. It's like the opposite. Like it doesn't have something. What is it? What does it not have, Chris?
Well, it's missing the back screen, right? Yes, I know. So you can't do playback. Obviously, you can't shoot live view, anything like that. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you're paying a lot of money to lose a feature, and that's fine. You know, you can go down that route. But I have to say, we definitely reviewed many, many years ago one of the D models. I think it was like the M8 or M9. And at first I was terrified. Like it was a really strange experience, but I actually found it quite enjoyable after like a harrowing hour, not having to constantly, you know, chimp your photos and have a look at the shots and like, is it in focus? And you kind of just start treating like an analog camera again. And so it's not a terrible, it's actually kind of a fun experience. I personally wouldn't buy one. I mean, I do like having a screen. I like having the live view option. I like being able to manual focus precisely with punch and magnification, and that's all gone. But if you want to have a digital format, but kind of have that analog experience, or just have as simple a process with as little between you and the photograph as possible, it's a cool version.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's worth pointing out when you were testing that, of course you're paranoid because you're reviewing a camera. Yeah. You need to make sure that like your shots are in focus and settings aren't screwed up or anything like that. And as soon as this comes up, we see the same thing we see every time. Like cameras have flip screens, just flip your screen backwards and go take pictures. But it is still kind of unique because remember, this is an actual rangefinder. So you're not seeing like exposure preview. You're focusing with a rangefinder mechanism. So it definitely, you're not as connected to like seeing exactly what the final output is like. So you are more surprised once you get back and actually check your images. I'm the same way. I'm not going to grab one of these, but I can't deny that when we did have, I believe it was an M9 variant.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was Heritage a 240 Park. Variant maybe, Chris.
240. Yeah, M240. Yes. Yeah, maybe.
That I did actually play with that a tiny bit before we went to Heritage Park and had fun with it. So I do see some purpose there. I'm not sure if we'll review it. I don't know. Might throw it in the docket for later, but you know, and it's cool.
It's neat that you get like the ISO dial on the back, right? So you kind of change it like a film speed. Yeah, so you have another analog kind of control there. It is, again, buying a Leica is not about saving money. It's not about practicality. It's not about, you know, well spent money. It's about having unique experience and unfortunately paying for that, but you're paying for that unique photographic experience, having fun with it, and that's always kind of been their path, their philosophy. So,
Jaron, does this have any appeal for you?
Before I mention that, because yes, and it's Chris's fault, I do want to say that he's nodding. He's like, "Yep, I know, I did that." The M11D is available to purchase for $9,395. That's $400. That's $400 more than the M11 and $200 more than the M11P. So when Chris said you're paying more for less, he was not exaggerating. You are literally paying more for less. On that note, I paid more for less recently because I told Chris, so I got my first few rolls back after shooting with my dad's Nikon F, and I don't know, something like scratched my brain on the inside and said, "This good, you fun, have more." So I looked at the pictures like this is so great, and I'm like, I feel like I need like another lens, or should I get another Nikon camera like from this period to do, because I'm having a hard time not having a light meter, even though Chris has taught me the Sunny 16 rule, and if I'm around Chris, he's just a human light meter, and I can just
have you developed those roles yet? You haven't?
No, because I still got one shot left in the camera that I need to burn before I go.
Because we were, just to give context, we were going blind. I was like, I think this exposure is like 400th of a second.
I'm very curious how they came out.
We'll see how they come out.
At any rate, Chris was like, I don't think you need a new lens or a new Nikon. I think you need a rangefinder. And then he's like, you should get a Voigtlander Bessa R2A. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And I looked it up. I was like, oh my God, these are so pretty and so expensive. So
now,
what?
That's not quite true. You asked me if you should get into like medium format.
Oh yeah, I wanted 120. You're right. I was like, should I do 120?
Yeah, you wanted 120. Looks cool. And I was like, yes, like it does look cool. The image quality is fantastic. You know, I don't know how much you'll use that, but anyways, you know, it's expensive. It's all new lenses and stuff. But now, and then you just went even more expensive with a Bessa. So, yeah, and you'll have to get some.
But that's your fault because you told me about it and you introduced me to it. And the thing is,
I'm sorry.
I did do it. I went to KEH because they're great. So I wanted to do KEH and not eBay because I don't really know what I'm getting out of eBay. This is not an ad read. This is legitimately how I feel. I know
this is why people use KEH.com.
Yeah, KEH actually has they had an E+ version of a Bessa in stock, and I'm like, I'm going to buy that one because I know what E+ means. And then I also got a 35 millimeter lens, M lens from Voigtlander. And Jordan's like, yeah, and Chris is like, that lens sucks.
Stupid choice. Honestly, when you get it, just throw the whole thing in the garbage. I'm totally not on board with this whole thing. I was trying to give you advice. You don't listen, forget it.
So I have been unable to buy an X100 for since February. So I decided to use the money I was going to spend on that and buy this instead because it does basically the same thing. It puts me in that same experience of just like enjoying pictures again. So now I'm
it's a great little camera.
Tapping my finger on my desk waiting for that thing to arrive. And it says like
weekly
by
update.
Tuesday.
I wanted one forever, and I just couldn't afford it. So I'm living vicariously through you.
Just really quick, before we go off Leica, I do want to mention as well, it wasn't a big thing that Leica talked a lot about, but this does have C2PA support. This is now their second camera with that. It is hardware-based, so I find it really interesting. Maybe we're going to see every product going forward will include those content credentials. Yes. I'm curious. Because who is going to be like, I need authentic evidence of my journalistic integrity, but I also don't want a screen. That seems like a small audience. So hopefully Leica's just saying like, if it's a Leica, it's going to have this. So we'll see.
So on this note, since you brought it up, we recently spoke to someone who's part of the CAI's main core group. And we expressed to them that we've heard from companies that there's no real difference between doing a software patch on the camera and doing a hardware encoding like Leica does. And we've heard that repeated a couple times, but this person said there's actually a difference, and the Leica's approach is actually the better one. I'm going to plan to do a little bit more digging into that in the future, but I did want to point out that
seems like a podcast.
Somebody we should get him on. Yeah, I'll work on that.
Yeah, he was great. Let's do it.
All right. Speaking, we're going to stay in the same vein of
beautiful vintage inspired cameras.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Chris.
Yeah.
Tell me about another one.
Yeah, so the Nikon ZFC. If you don't know, I mean, this is an APS-C size sensor from Nikon, but it is modeled even more accurately off of a classic FE/FM body than even the Nikon ZF is, right? The ZF's a little bit bigger, a little bit different grip. The ZFC is, in my opinion, the most beautiful mirrorless camera on the market right now. But in Japan, they love to take these cameras and make them even more customizable and even more adventurous and more stylish as an accessory. Nikon ZFC cameras only in Japan are now being adorned with a sort of a collab between Heralbony. I mean, Japanese always have the weirdest names. Heralbony, their Japanese art, beautiful, colorful facelifts, very funky. You can check out the news story on PetaPixel to see all the colors. But yes, so far, and honestly, it's going to stay only in Japan, I'm sure. Maybe other parts of Asia, but that's it.
Do you like any of these colors, Chris?
I mean, it's not my thing, but it's funky. Not my thing.
I didn't notice this until right now. I finally scrolled all the way to the bottom. It's not just a skin around the outside. It's also on top. Right
the prism.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess it is. Is it really? It's not really a prism.
It's where the prism would have gone.
Is a bump.
Yeah.
Is a point.
The bump. Yeah. I like the kind of watercolory one. That one looks.
Do you? Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, you're going to fly
after
to
the
Japan,
Bessa,
fly to Japan and buy one.
Yeah. almost the same price as buying the Bessa.
Yep.
So there you go. It's not going to come to the US as far as we know. They were saying like it's not coming. It's only in Japan. So Japan gets more cool things that we don't get.
That's true. Because it works. Like, and Canada gets the least. I mean, of all the countries, Canadian cameras, they like go with the most basic colors, minimal variety because, like, I don't know, like
White's too edgy.
Yeah, we want black or maybe some black on it. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, Jordan, in early August, we talked about Sigma planning to make a cinema version of the 28 to 45 f1.8 art.
We did, and I had some real questions that could only be answered with actual images of the lens.
Well, we got those this week. What do you think? So what makes this special is it's Sigma's first cinema lens to feature autofocus.
Yes.
But as a cinema lens, I don't know if you expected it. I personally expected it to still kind of look like the other cinema lens series lenses, like with the gears integrated.
Yeah.
And it looks like it does.
Yep.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's great. This does actually have a proper indexed focus ring, which is what I was very concerned about. Right. I kind of expected that it would just stay as like a focus by wire device, so it would be used primarily as an autofocus lens. But it looks like it's going to be equally functional for autofocus and manual focus. What I still want to test, I'm adamant about this, is Sony has brought out a series of autofocus lenses with manual focus rings on them, and it is a focus by wire that you're driving, and there's a weird delay, which makes it very hard to just feel, pull focus. I mean, certainly you can hit marks again, which is great, but if you want to actually try and pull focus mid-shot without marking anything, those were extremely difficult to use. You'd overshoot a lot of the time. So I want to get my hands on this, see if that is still the case. I was surprised I didn't really see anything from IBC about how it feels. So
I bet it was behind glass. That's probably why.
That would be my guess as well. So there's still questions about this, but when we did that initial podcast, I was like, I really hope we're going to see proper indexed manual focus and autofocus together. They are doing that. So now the question is just how responsive it's going to be. So I'm excited. I think we should reach out. I would love to review this lens. I think that would be really cool.
Okay. So we are going to go ahead and assume it is the exact same optical formula. Right?
I'm looking at them right now. They are the exact same physical size.
Yeah, and like, they T-stopped it to f2 because, of course, that's just
T2.
how it is. Yeah, T2, yeah. But that is, of course, because it's 1.8 lens, but you can't
the
get
best Terminator movie as well.
T2 was the best Terminator movie, yeah. Yeah, and Aliens is too, but do we really want to go off topic on a rant now about James Cameron? I don't know.
I mean, it's a movie lens. We're talking about movies. I think
Avatar 2 was worse than the first one. I know you don't agree, but anyways, we're going on a rant. Back to the news.
I think that's all I've got here. I will see about getting one of these just so that you can have them together and decide if one is better than the other for specific circumstances. But yeah, it looks like all their other cinema lenses, except the fact it has that little switch on the side. And it does also look like it's a little bit fatter up near the top third near the front optic. So we'll see. Oh, and it doesn't have that button anymore either, which I guess you wouldn't need.
But it's got pin registration on it, which is cool. Yeah, it's a neat lens.
Yeah, it's a fully electronic lens. Yeah. This rules. I want to play with it. I want L mount. So
and they'll make others. They'll make others.
Great.
Okay. I will ask. Speaking of lenses, let's talk about Canon and a new 28 to 70 f2.8 IS STM for $1,099.
Mm-hmm. Describe it in one word. Go.
Small?
Cheaper? You know, we always like these kind of things, right? I mean, it's interesting. We saw the 28-105. Now we're seeing a 28-70 from Canon. You know, you could call it maybe like a reversal back to more classic focal ranges, but they're more affordable and easier to make focal ranges. So yeah, you're giving up 24 millimeters. I want to test it. I'm sure it's actually quite decent at 2.8. Most modern lenses are. But, you know, you're going down to the STM. The stepping motor does bring the cost down a little bit. It's built to looks like an STM lens, maybe not the same standard, obviously not L quality, but image stabilized. I think it's going to be very lightweight. I think it's going to be very compact. I love that kind of stuff for walking around. So my only real questions on this are going to be, I'm not worried about the focusing speed, but is it going to be sharp at 2.8? What are we giving up there? And will the bokeh be nice? But Canon usually do a really good job with their more affordable optics. So this is exciting. I want to play with it. And not everybody has, $2,400 to plump down on a 2.8 lens.
Yeah, this is a good addition to their lens lineup.
Yeah.
The lens lineup from Canon needs more of these because their lenses are too expensive generally.
Yeah, it's a lot of very basic lenses and then tons of extremely high-end options. It's this mid-range they really need to fill out a lot more. So I think that's great to see. I am also curious how this is going to compare because Sigma made a very small 28 to 70 a few years ago, but it didn't have stabilization. So I don't think Canon is doing a rebadged Sigma or something like that. But I'm curious how those will compare. Especially if we do start seeing more opening up on the RF mount. Who knows if that'll ever happen, but I'm curious.
September 26th is when B&H Photo expects this to start shipping. We don't have one. Canon is not fantastic at getting new lenses out for review here in North America fast. But if you're curious about someone's opinion who is not working for a dealer and is not us, Gordon Laing.
Oh, that guy's great.
Yeah, I've heard great things about the Gordon.
Member of the Two Timers Club on the PetaPixel podcast.
There you go.
He's going to be a 3-timer hopefully soon. He has a preview of this, I believe. I thought I saw it on his channel. If I'm crazy, I apologize. But if not, it's in the link. It's a link in the description below. You can check out what his thoughts are. But if you can't wait to hear from Chris and Jordan,
he is great. But hopefully they get us one soon. I mean, come on, geez, come on, man, guys, come on.
Yeah.
Do we do a budget 2470 shootout? Because Nikon's got that 2875 as well.
So it would be
fun.
a budget
that wouldn't
28.
Be a 24 to say. Yeah. It's okay. He's had a long week.
All right. Well, I'm going to make him talk some more because
no.
No.
By the time this podcast goes out, we have another action camera on the market. Comes out hot on the heels of GoPro, DJI's Osmo Action. So if you guys are curious about the GoPro, Jordan can give you a quick overview of what he thinks. He likes it.
Really
we used
good.
it
I like
last
the
week.
new accessories. It's better at usability, not a big hardware update.
Well, DJI Osmo Action
is the opposite.
Oh, well,
it's kind of cool. So they're moving over to a considerably larger sensor than what we're seeing on the GoPro. And I wrote down those measurements and I have to scroll up and I'm going to have it. Yeah. So it's a 1/1.3 type over a 1/1.9. So that is a dramatically larger sensor, but it is a more traditional 4:3 aspect ratio. I strongly suspect this is the same chip that we just saw on the Google Pixel 9, which was excellent image quality on that main camera. And because of that, just looking at some quick tests, it does seem to be a better option if you're going to do a lot of work in low light. Just soaks up a little bit more light. Trade-off is you are sacrificing some of the high-res modes. This is in video recording, just going up to 4K, where we've seen GoPro doing 5.3K. And that more boxy aspect ratio as well, which I do love. I think that's really cool. So they do both really kind of have their strengths at this point. One thing I do really like is when we were doing our car cast, you'll often see me lean towards the camera. If you watch that in video format, it's me tapping the back screen to turn on the front screen so I can check and make sure my exposure is okay and it's still rolling and stuff. With this camera, both the front and back displays are touchscreen and have the full interface there, which is really smart. Makes it a lot easier if you set up that camera in an awkward angle, lean it up against something facing you. Now you can still control the camera while it's propped up there, which is really smart. And the other big thing, we tested GoPro's Bluetooth support, and I haven't done testing on the latest version, but if it's using the same protocols I expect, if you use your Bluetooth headset, the quality was pretty bad before. And the DJI will actually network directly with their own transmitters from the DJI mics with a better than Bluetooth connection. Yeah, so they said, we're not calling it Bluetooth because the audio quality is substantially better. It's a lot like what Shure did with their recent microphones that were just kicking into a smartphone, not using Bluetooth protocols. So it's a similar idea to that. So if audio is important, that also makes the DJI really, really cool. So we are working our way towards a full shootout. My kid's going to be doing some BMXing with both options here. So we'll have more in the future. But if you are looking at an action camera, it looks like there are actually a couple compelling options out there. I just want to say to both of you, why do we do action cams in September? Like, what the hell? Like, shouldn't these all be coming out in like the spring?
They should be a summer release,
you could spend
right?
all summer with your awesome new action cam. Like, I understand Christmas, maybe.
Skiing.
These like under $500 cameras make sense for that. But damn it, like I could do way better testing if it wasn't like going to be gross Canadian fall.
But that's Canadia's fault, right? Like Canadia's fault. So, because people in Florida are going to be like, this is awesome. I can use this all year round. You know what I mean? So, it's not the action camera's fault, Jordan.
I'm blaming the entire, I think GoPro started this. Everyone's doing the same thing. I'm opposed, and I'm starting a petition that no one will sign.
Yeah.
Everybody releases their cameras
today.
Yeah, you can't talk today. Everybody releases their cameras in September. I mean, this is a global problem. This isn't an action cam thing. This is everybody cam thing, right? But you're having a hard time talking, but that's good because you got to talk some more now. Let's talk about our next story.
We got another thing here. This is something that
keep talking.
So I was curious about the Osmo Action because I didn't know anything about it leading into this. So thank you for informing me, Jordan. I feel smarter now already.
Eloquently, of course.
Yeah, very eloquent. But now you have to be that again because last week Nikon announced that there is red LUT support for N-Log, and you broke your back to go out there. Not literally. You were just very busy yesterday, and you did this anyway. You went out and you tested it, even though you still needed to finish that iPhone review.
Now, look, I had to stand for the actual examples, though.
You did, yes.
So before I put these on screen and before you talk about them, can you explain the difference between the first and second Chris clips?
Yeah, so my biggest issue with N-Log, and it's something I've been butting up against ever since they first released this format, is if you're properly exposing your log file so you don't have too much information sitting in that noisy shadow, it does tend to be quite overexposed. And my major problem with N-Log is whether you're previewing it on the back of the camera or when you first apply it to your footage in post, it cranks the midtones and highlights very close to the clipping point. So what that means is when I'm out shooting with the Nikon, and both Jaron, you and Chris can probably attest to this when we were doing the Z6 III in Portland, it looks like you're just shooting a blown out video clip if you've exposed it properly.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Yes.
It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
And it makes
log.
and it makes it very difficult to check focus as well. Like, oh, did I hit the eye? I don't know. I'm going to look at this blown out thing with a black dot in the middle of it and hope that that's an eyeball. So it has been a real issue for me. And of course, you can apply other LUTs in post. There's lots of other options out there. But this is really interesting to me because it's first party. And this is something, if you use a lot of third parties, sometimes you'll run up where it's like, oh, I'm clipping color channels for some reason, where this is something that Red and Nikon have worked together to get the Nikon N-Log to approximate what you'd get out of a Red camera as closely as possible. So they dropped 5 LUTs here. We have a technical LUT, which is just a transform. So makes your color look nice and natural, expands the full dynamic range into a 709 color space.
Wait, just to clarify, so the first clip of Chris where he's putting his arms out and he's looking like you want a piece of me,
that's a Nikon.
Sorry. Properly exposed?
Yeah, so the 2 clips, that would be how I would ideally expose the image.
So brighter version is Chris with his hands
exposed.
out.
Second
and the other
version
one's under.
is, under, but what looks decent on the monitor while you're actually shooting it.
And then the final one of the concert is just another clip.
I wanted to do a very high contrast and something with a lot of artificial lighting because when I mentioned a lot of the time you'll see like color channels falling apart and stuff. That happens a lot with like bright lights, RGBs, things like that. So I thought that would be a good test for comparison as well. So we've got 3 clips there. The Nikon, you can see the properly exposed one is totally blown out. When we scale it back, it's more usable, but I know I'm getting more noise in that. Mm-hmm. And the last clip is quite noisy, actually, but those highlights are just completely shot with the Nikon LUT. So I started with the technical LUT just to kind of get an idea, and it does very much remind me of the Nikon. The tonality is quite similar. This is not something with a cool, creative look to it. But I did find it's quite a bit more usable in that overexposed example, especially if you pull it up on a waveform. The Nikon everything is cranked at 100%. It's like at the clipping point, where here it's all kind of resting under like 85% through your waveform. So a whole lot more usable looking at that. What do you guys think of that technical red LUT?
You're right. It looks really similar to the
It looks
Nikon
like a
one.
straight across, transform.
Just a straight transform.
It gets more exciting. By the way, for anybody who's just listening on the podcast, on your podcasting apps, we apologize. This section is going to be...
I'm going to try and explain it as best I can, and I'm going to refer to the I'm going to refer to the
translate.
waveform a lot as well, so people can understand what's going on under the hood.
Okay.
So then moving along, we've got their film offset, which is
I like it.
really, really, really nice. So this is film emulation with a bias towards the warm tones. Works great with Chris's skin tone. And again, if we look at this in the properly exposed image, it's still bright.
It's pretty
They
hot.
always will be. It is definitely hot, but all the information is still there.
Right. I don't
even
see
looking at
anything
the sky.
blown. I see detail in those highlights. They're just close.
Exactly. So if I dropped this in, I can still see like what's actually blown out as opposed to what's just a little bit bright. So this is going to be a great starting point. And importantly, those skin tones, as you can see with the lower exposure there, they look really, really nice. I mean, this is definitely, if I'm shooting on Nikon, I think as a base step, this is what I'm always going to be using in post, is jumping on that one. The next one that we've got there, this is what did they call it?
Film bias offset.
Film bias offset, yes. So here, they're basically swinging things in the opposite direction. When we just did the Super 8, the thing that stood out to me when I was color grading is a heavy push towards the teal side of things. This is like your classic, Fuji motion picture film kind of look. And this does swing things a little bit that way. Not too much.
It's way more obvious in the darker version. Like teal's strong.
Yeah, and you can see it in those spotlights as well at the Roots concert footage there as well. So it kind of just depends on which way your preference swings. If you want a little warmer or a little cool tone, I mean that might come down to the type of narrative that you're doing as well.
That noise I made is in response to the next one because it showed up on the screen.
Yeah, I don't like bleach bypass. Do you guys?
I've never liked bleach bypass.
Nobody likes bleach bypass.
Some people do.
90s movies like bleach bypass. Any 90s action movie loved gold teal bleach bypass.
Or like if it's like a flashback scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Be in bleach
of
bypass.
something horrible happening.
Edgy vampire movie. Yeah.
So I looked at the first two of Chris and I was like, stupid bleach bypass. I don't care for that at all. But the concert footage is actually kind of fun. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So again, it's something I would use for a very specific tool, but it's in the LUT kit there. And then the last one there is their black and white. They're achromatic.
Film achromatic? Achromatic?
Achromatic.
Which I always use Panasonics for black and white because I've got a very nice, they call it Noir 33, a LUT that Panasonic provides, which is my favorite black and white LUT. So anything I shoot, black and white, Panasonic. This is giving that a real run for its money. I played with some other footage. I really love the look and tonality of this, and super easy to still grade, push it in either direction. That's
what I'd add. I like the tonal range is beautiful. I think I'd grade it a little bit further.
You could still swing it, add a little bit of contrast to it, but as a starting point, the way it handles highlights, especially like we talk about this a lot with like Leica's black and white emulation, I think it looks really great. So
crush the shadows, and I think it would just be like...
Yeah, I feel like the properly exposed version of Chris is not contrasting. Like the blacks aren't rich enough to me, but you could always add that. This is a good
it's easy to drop that stuff down. But
I
as
can
a starting
see what
point,
it would look like with the too dark exposed one. Some of those blacks are starting to look better.
Yeah.
And then your concert scene, I also think I would move that contrast
bring them down
up.
Bring it down a little bit. But I'm looking at it in terms of like, what could I easily work with? And a lot of black and white profiles I just find are either way too contrasty or you really lose that mid-tone to highlight separation there, where this looks great. So I like these LUTs, but there's a real problem when we're looking at that. And this is an official Nikon to Red LUT. And my problem is when I'm using Nikon cameras, I click on that view assist so I can see the N-Log LUT, and I'm still looking at that terrible blown out footage. So what I want to know is they've rolled these out. Are we going to see them as a firmware update for the cameras? So I can then in it say like, hey, I want to record N-Log. Which view assist LUT do I want to use? Because if I can put that film LUT, the one with the warmer tone on top of it, I would just shoot all day in that and I'd be thrilled. I think that would be a dramatic improvement in the actual shooting experience. Where what I have to do now is use some sort of external recorder, put the N-Log Red LUT into that and use it for assistance. But I can't do it on the camera proper. And I don't like using a big monitor, especially on something like that Z6 III. You got a beautiful EVF. I want to throw a LUT in there. So I'm hoping Nikon looks at that going forward. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I want to know your thoughts as well. Definitely tell me what you think about those, which ones you would select. But that's where I'm at, is basically if I'm shooting on Nikon, I'm going to be using these LUTs moving forward. Nice. They look cool and good.
But it doesn't solve your original problem yet. So hopefully in the future it will. Yeah.
Nikon listens. Hopefully they're listening to this.
Okay. Let's talk about the next thing, which is megapixels. Which
those things are vastly inferior to petapixels. I'll tell you that.
That's true. Yeah.
We have a story on PetaPixel about this if you want to read some more information. But there is a contentious take available online right now that the iPhone, that Apple is lying to you, I think is like the general gist about the iPhone's resolution. I'm going to just hand the mic to Chris here because he's smarter than me.
Oh, so yeah, of course, we just reviewed the iPhone 16. You guys watched the iPhone 16, and everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of comments are really focusing on Tony Northrup's latest video where he's calling out Apple, saying it's disingenuous to say that your sensors are 48 megapixels and, doing tests and stuff like that. And I get it. And I know Tony's changed his approach on how he's reviewing products, and that's fine. That's his kind of like method he wants to do now. But I guess the only thing I want to give is just clarity. We just want to have a conversation about this, give clarity. This isn't like a new thing. It's not like the iPhone 16 started this. I mean, the real controversy comes down to quad Bayer sensors. iPhone just did their ultra wide camera up to 48 megapixels now with a quad Bayer sensor. And it's not a new thing. You're definitely not getting 48 megapixels of resolution. Megapixels and resolution don't always go hand in hand. And the standard file coming out of that ultra wide camera is still 12 megapixels. And so when we look at these quad Bayer sensors, you're getting a higher pixel count, but the actual usable resolution is far less than 48 megapixels. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. But it's been that way for years now. I mean, it's been that way on a lot of the older iPhones. It's been that way on a lot of the other Googles. And so the reason we don't jump on it in our full reviews now is because we've already talked about this for quite a few years now. And so we just feel like this is kind of common knowledge. We do mention it in our episode, in our conclusion. We also mention, you're not getting anywhere close to 48 megapixels resolution. I would put it, if I had to give a comparison, I would put it above 12 megapixels. If I shoot a 48 megapixel RAW on an iPhone or a Google Pixel for that matter, because it's the same technology.
Or Samsung, any of the smartphones we've tested.
It's not an Apple thing. It's absolutely not an Apple thing. And you look at those files raw and then you process them, they're more closer to like 16-ish, 20-ish. I mean, there is a resolution benefit absolutely using a 48 megapixel RAW, but it's not going to compete with a mirrorless camera. It's not going to compete with a full frame camera. I think that stuff is silly to compare anyways. And smartphones have always tried to make up for the lack of sensor size and resolution with computational stacking of images. And that's how they do it. That's the approach. Again, this is absolutely true. It's just not new. So I just don't want people going out there to think, oh, this is like Apple just starting to do this marketing BS. Everybody's doing this marketing BS. And we've talked about it quite a bit in the years past.
Yeah. I want to go ahead. Go ahead, Jaron. I'll wrap up. I do have a quote from Sebastian DeWith, who is very knowledgeable on this, and he is directly related with Halide. So they very tied in with how this works, but I'll let you go first, Jordan, then I'll read a quote from.
Well, I just wanted to say, when we do a review, my question is, are we getting more perceived resolution if you shoot those massive files. And I do find it is a little bit annoying, especially with that ultra wide on the new iPhone, that it's like your choices are a 12 megapixel HEIF or shooting RAW. I would really love to see the option we have in the main camera where it does a 24 megapixel file. And I don't think any of those cameras are resolving a full 24 megapixels, but we are seeing a resolution bump over the 12s. That's what I would like to see with any of these quad bayers. It's just you're going to get a little bit more detail out of them.
And again, I want to say we did mention that in the full review as well. Absolutely. You know, how it'd be a nice option to have the 24 megapixel file. You also have to consider the context of how you're going to use these pictures, right? Like for social media, it's a moot point, right? But of course, if you do want to maybe print something larger or crop a little bit more, you do get a small advantage going with the RAW and then processing it. But most people are going to be using these for social media. You're not going to notice any difference.
All right, so I'll get Sebastian's title actually correct. He's a Dutch designer who lives in Santa Cruz, I found out, by the way.
Oh, nice. We should have said hi to him.
Yeah, we could have gone and seen him. He's the co-founder and designer at LUTs, which is the parent company of Halide. So here we go. iPhones went to 48 megapixels with the iPhone 14, the most 48 megapixel output being limited to ProRAW at first. It's, of course, never quite useful to compare an iPhone or any smartphone to a full-frame camera because physics dictate your image output. Yeah. You can't defeat physics when it comes to gathering light and getting a certain kind of rendering. That's why phones tend to compensate in an area they are far superior in, computation. Computational photography has enabled stuff your full-frame camera can't even dream of, like 10-second handheld nighttime exposures with a sensor the size of your pinky toenail or smaller. I think as photographers, we enjoy comparing specs and outputs, but we've always known that megapixels are not a reliable indicator of camera quality. It's not even an indicator of resolution. Resolving detail comes down to the lens and camera attributes and parameters. If we want to truly measure the impact of Apple's claim of 48 megapixels, then we should look at what it enables. Do you get higher resolution photos with more detail? Undoubtedly. Moving further, can you say that it truly offers 4 times the detail of a 12 megapixel sensor that precede it? Well, it's a quad Bayer arrangement that optimizes for 12 megapixel. I think this is where he's getting the answer to that. Well, it's a quad Bayer arrangement that optimizes for 12 megapixel and now 24 megapixel output, which makes fantastic sense for 99% of iPhone users' photos and videos. I would go on a limb and say it is. So he disagrees with you, Chris. He says it is. Why? Because almost every pro photographer I have seen use it has been impressed with the output of the virtual 2x quotes, lens that is included, which is using a center portion crop of the 48 megapixel sensor and some smart processing to give you a sort of arguably optical extra lens. These images aren't as detailed as other full sensor outputs, but they can stand toe-to-toe with previous 2x telephoto outputs on iPhone in many cases, which were 12 megapixel sensors with actual lenses. Yeah. It's a dubious claim to make then, that the iPhone's higher resolution is, quote, misleading or only real on paper. People use it every day and get higher resolution shots with more detail. Whether it's the same resolving power as a full-frame camera? Probably not. But it's comparing an apple to an orange or Sony.
So look,
it's a pun. An apple to a Sony. Get it?
No, it was good.
Yeah. There you go. So yeah, everybody's going to fall on a spectrum of how usable it is for them, absolutely. But again, it's just like...
It just seems like a silly thing to point out now as if it's something that was brand new.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, people see stuff. I mean, that's kind of the thing is people just see stuff or they hear somebody say it. And it's very easy if somebody's like, oh, blah, 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 screwing you over. Like, you need to know this, right? I mean, that's very sensationalist and it works. And I'm just saying like, yeah, you kind of have to dig a little bit deeper and not go with your first gut reaction. There is absolutely truth. I'm on board with it's not anywhere close to 48 megapixels. I'm on that side of the spectrum, but at the same time, it's not Apple's thing. It's not exclusive to them, and a lot of people are saying like, oh, Apple's just trying to do this to whatever. It's like, well, everybody's doing it, and we've known about it for a long time, so it's not a new thing at all. Yeah, and so we don't react. We don't react with the same kind of passion about it because it's kind of old news, and yeah. And that's why hopefully you guys watch our reviews and then we explain some of this stuff in the review.
Yeah, you have to watch the review though.
Watch the review. Yeah.
One other similar line of vein of this is that prior to the embargo of the reviews lifting, there was a lot of talk. It was actually prior to even them being announced. So it was prior to the announcement and then after they were announced, but prior to review embargo, there was a lot of online rumors, which are, of course, as you should fully understand, rumors.
What? You mean
Jordan, they're-
pre-release facts?
Yes. Pre-release facts. Yeah.
I don't like how good that sounds. You needed to make it sound not as good as that. There was this idea that the iPhone was going to support 45-watt wired charging, which, if you watch our review, Chris says it doesn't do that. That's because it doesn't do that.
It doesn't do that.
The only type of charging that got actually faster across the board is the wireless charging through a MagSafe adapter, which is, if you connect it and there's a wire, is it actually wireless anymore? I still think that it's connected with the magnet.
It makes a schloop sound and attaches to it.
Okay.
I don't have to plug things in. So yeah, I'm going to...
All right. But it still takes charging via USB-C. And I think it's funny to me that there's this idea that Apple specifically isn't telling you the truth about how good something they did is. So they're like trying to obfuscate and hide that their charging's actually better when it isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't actually better, except in one very specific case. So if you are taking two iPhones, an iPhone 15 Pro and an iPhone 16 Pro, and they both have 50% charge left on them, and you plug them both in and the screens are off and you leave them, they will charge to 100% at exactly the same rate. However, if you do take those two phones and you start playing Honkai Star Rail on both of them.
You love Honkai Star Rail.
I just know that it makes the iPhone really hot and it looks really good when you play it. It's a highly intensive game. Well, the iPhone 16 will get to 100% charge before the iPhone 15 does. That's because Apple managed to do more with how the phone can do background tasks and take a charge on the 16 than on the 15. So in that very specific instance of intensive app pulling power while plugged in, yes, the 16 will charge faster.
Yeah.
But under most circumstances, no, it won't.
Yeah, it basically, the charging itself is still limited to just under 30 watts charging. It's exactly the same. And I'm going to call wireless MagSafe heavy petting charging from now on, and then the wired like full insertion charging. I think that makes more sense. Well, it's more...
No, it makes sense, and that's why I'm upset.
Okay, good. But yeah, so this is another example of like, I mean, Apple could have gone on the launch event and be like, no, well, 45 watts of charging, right? I mean, but they didn't, because like, yeah, it would cause more problems than anything else, because it's not true. Yeah. So yeah, this is why we do with the review, and I have to say, like, I get why people get confused. It's very easy, and if I learned anything now from doing some smartphone reviews and digital cameras in general, anytime we look at a new product, you'll see these statements being made, or you'll see these facts or specs being laid out, and it's very easy to just like take that at face value, and you can't do that. Like, you always have to dig deeper. Like, anytime I'm looking at a camera now and reviewing a camera and going through the specs and talking to the designers and the engineers, it really pays to like really suss out those questions and make sure you get to the bottom, because it's very easy to make assumptions, and 9 out of 10 times they're not true. And when you actually then talk to the designers, like, oh yeah, that's where the explanation comes from. That's where it's not quite accurate to what people are saying. So yeah, it's that's why we did in the full review. We made sure to ask those questions. We wanted to suss that out, and that's how it works. There you go.
All right. Last thing, and it has to do with photo styles on iPhone, because other reviewers spent a lot of time talking about it. And there's a comment on the website that I've read that I felt like was worth responding to, from Jordan CS13.
Ooh,
surprised you didn't, not you, Jordan, different Jordan, CS13.
Yeah, it's still a good first name.
Yeah.
I don't think I wrote this email, Jaron. I'm tired. I'm not that tired.
He just likes the name.
Surprised that you didn't go more in depth on the new toning and styles aside from the undertone settings. The Verge noted that you can remove the overprocessed tone mapping that's on by default, getting more natural shadows and highlights rather than the over HDR'd looking images. Thoughts, Chris?
Yeah. So we did talk a little bit. So the iPhone 16, just for context, it separates the picture styles now into basically two categories. You've got your undertones, and then you've got your more classic filters, like your art filters, your black and white, your vibrant. They added luminous and ethereal, and like the significance really, there's two things I want to talk about. So one thing we did mention on the iPhone 16, it's great that you actually now have a toggle, actual button on the screen all the time, not just partly like on the 15, all the time, where you can touch it and you can actually change opacity of the filters. You can change the tone of it. You can change the strength of saturation, and even to some degree, like the actual exposure curve. And so that's really cool. I like that they have that. And we mentioned it. I mean, again, it's a long review. You can only focus so much. The undertone part is really cool. And that's something that Apple's really excited about. So I try to put more attention into that too, because that's where you're adding color tonality, but with a large emphasis on skin tones being retained accurately. Pardon me. So we tried to show that. I took pictures of my daughter. She's like very pale, very white skin, like almost blue in tone. And then eyes, you can probably see I've got a tan, fairly warm skin tone, quite yellow tonality. And so I wanted to specifically choose undertones that would like exaggerate that. So I took a shot of her with it's called cool rose color. Adds a distinct blue cool tone, and yet it doesn't make her skin look much bluer. Like it really does a very good job. And so intelligently, the phone will look at the scene, evaluate the different tones, colors, and then add things selectively. I think that's really smart, as opposed to just like a one-time like blue filter, like you'd have an Instagram or something like that. And then for my tone, I tried the amber, tried the rose quartz with her as well. And it's just neat to see how it does retain a lot of the detail in the skin tonality. I thought it was actually really well done, very pleasing. I know people have given iPhones a hard time honestly, all smartphones, a hard time for the way that they render skin tone as looking quite plasticky. A lot of that's because the HDR to SDR conversion, as opposed to like a fault of the actual skin tone rendering. But yeah, if you don't like the standard on the iPhone 15, the other color tones tend to be fairly artistic. And so they don't do a nice job with skin tones. So I really liked and focused on the undertone stuff, because that seems to be a real concerted effort to give you color options while still retaining skin tone, and you can customize all that. So if I didn't accentuate that enough in the review, I apologize, but it is a very cool feature. I did try to talk about it. I still like the standard rendering for a lot of stuff. I know people are going to do a lot of filtration after in separate apps anyways, but I do like the undertone. I think for me, that was more interesting than the other art filter picture styles.
All right. If you got any more specific questions on this for Chris, he can answer them next week during the podcast. So put them in the comments below, or send me an email, or send a speak pipe. Well, actually, don't send a speak pipe on this, because I might not get to it for a while. So if it's specifically about this, comment, please. We have so many speak pipes.
I just want to point out one more thing about it too, and I know a lot of people are commenting. That's great, and they have a lot of questions. That's good. We are like this is a 25-minute video, and we're doing one product, right? Like that's a lot more than we normally put on it, because smartphones have so much to cover. But we absolutely always then do a roundup. We're going to wait for Samsung to come out with whatever they're going to come out with and stuff, and that will take some time. But when that happens, we always like to do comparisons then with that season's phones, where we can then really more get into this. Like who does do a nicer skin tone? Who does do a better portrait style? Who does have better hardware? And so that is absolutely going to come. We did that last year. We're going to do that this year too. Although it'll probably be next year.
In 2025. Yeah. Given Samsung is probably not going to announce something until January. You can probably expect that in early 2025. Okay. Well, that was a hell of a week.
Yeah.
A lot happened. Other than being chained to your desk, Jordan, what have you been up to? And Chris, what have you been up to?
Well, there's one more news story that I want to talk about.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Before we get into what we've been up to. So last podcast in the car, I mentioned that FIPS was a term that was used. Okay. We won't say who, but in on the Apples, it is in our, talking and getting our meetings and stuff. So the term FIPS was used to represent frames per second. Okay.
I deleted this off the board in hopes he would forget.
There's no way I'm letting this go. And so no damn way I'm letting this go. And so just to give context to everybody, I mean, I talked about this in the car cast, and the first time I mentioned it was actually sitting at Apple Park having lunch. We were doing a lot of work. There was other people there, other media there. Your friend Ray, I mean, he's a nice guy, Jaron, and I'm going to send him a message so I get the contact. But he was like, Chris, you're crazy. Nobody said that. That's stupid. And then Jordan, like, my best
Sorry,
friend
can
and
we
partner,
throw some context here? FIPS was short for frames per second. Is
yeah,
what started
I said that
this.
already.
Okay,
Yeah, I said that already. Frames per second, FIPS, right? And so I said, oh, I didn't use the term. I said somebody there said FIPS, and you guys were like, "That's crazy. You're crazy. You're wrong." Jordan, my best friend
Yeah.
for so many years, and my business partner, who's known me for well over 15 years, said I was at the meeting. They said no such thing. Okay, Jaron also repeated a very similar thing.
So
and then Ray said I was crazy. And then basically the entire media contingency from Germany also said I was crazy. So I was hurt, deeply offended, really put out. I mentioned it on the CarCast again. Your responses were quite negative. Anyways, what happened, Jaron?
Okay, so later on, Ray told me that he was around Apple Park and he also heard the use of FIPS.
Yes, in the briefing.
And he described to me when it happened, and I was like, this is why I don't remember. It happened when I went to the bathroom. It was right during that initial period where I wasn't present. So I am still correct in that I have never heard a human other than Chris Nichols utter
Jordan, were you also
FIPS.
peeing at the same time as Jaron?
I wasn't, so I just have to assume that someone whispered this in your ear where I couldn't hear it. They were just like 120 FIPS.
Yeah,
because I would definitely perk up if I heard someone use that, but I didn't. Yeah. So
I heard it twice.
I don't know what to say.
I heard it twice, and the first time I heard it, I was like, "What? Huh? I was like, huh? Was that?" And then the second time I was like, "Oh yeah, they're using that." Okay, and that's why I was intrigued, and then mentioned it to my good friends who basically treated me like garbage.
Thank you.
Garbage. And when Ray
you should see how I treat actual garbage.
And then when Ray heard it in the thing, he lost his mind.
He said he
right?
almost spat out his, like he was taking a drink of like a soda or something, and he almost spat it out. He could not believe he heard it. Anyways. So you got vindication, and I could feel his joy resonating through an iMessage when I said that this happened. For what it's worth,
if the commenters want to send me an apology from last week's podcast, I'd appreciate that.
We're not. I would like to take a stand, and we're not going to allow FIPS to be a thing. No, we're not doing FIPS.
Because my apology was going to take place in the action cam shootout, where I'm going to be talking about frames per second constantly. I was going to give him one video, where I would be flipping, and that would be my apology.
Let's popularize it.
You can do it and see if
I don't
anyone
want to popularize it. I think it sounds stupid, but I will do it in the action cam shootout.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
I'm going to put an I in all my articles now, in between F and P. Just
so you know, Chris. By the way, this does not count as a news story. This is in the "What have you been up to" section. I'm not changing it.
Yeah,
bro, it is news.
That's yours. It's over.
So that is what you've been up to, fostering resentment against the people that love you.
You've deferred your "What are you up to?"
Jordan, I know what you've been up to. Do you have anything to add to that, though?
Yeah, I've been crazy busy, but I escaped briefly on the weekend for, if you were to say, like, what's Jordan up to, probably at the very bottom of the list would be that I was at Monster Jam with my kids. My sister-in-law had some free tickets, so we all went.
Going.
So I'm like, I've been very busy, but I'm going to use that tiny window of time to go to Monster Jam. And I got some critiques, okay? So, first of all, it starts with a race around a track outside of the jumps. That's the first event. Why are these monster trucks not going off the jumps during their race? The race should include them going over, because what do monster trucks do good? They do big jumps. That was the first event, okay? Not good. Second event, donut competition. They sit in the dirt and then they spin and the dirt like kicks out. And it's a half an hour of various trucks sitting in the middle and then they spin and dirt goes around. This is bullshit. I want this gone, okay? Whoa. That event, take it out of the running, okay?
Right,
Jaron, mark that so you can bleep.
He's going to bleep it. The first time you swear and it's over monster trucks?
Yeah, feel very strongly about this. Third one was freestyle, where they went off the jumps and did different things. And that was on, like, the reptile part of my brain was like, I wonder if that car's going to tip over when it goes off that jump. So I get it. It was riveting in that moment. But they don't crush things anymore. I'm like, I'm going to go see cars get smashed. I understand it's, like, not ecologically sound to smash cars, but smash something. Like, build some cheesy IKEA sheds and make the trucks drive over them. I want to see the trucks scoosh things in the future going forward.
Sell sheds?
I don't like okay, an IKEA,
I think IKEA manufacturer would stand up to the monster trucks.
Make an unlanlet and then hit that with a truck. But I gotta say, I was disappointed. And if they want to bring me on as a producer, I got a lot of good ideas to make this a much better sport for spectators.
They're not going to bring you on as an announcer, that's for sure.
All right. Had fun with the kids. Monster Jam. 2 out of 10 stars.
You don't appreciate the high octane ballet that monster trucking has become. When you watch them go off those jumps, they are precisely landing them. The rotation of the vehicles themselves, being able to stand upright with perfect balance, like crushing things is past. We're now showing this as an art form, and I think you're failing to appreciate that. If they were to race on the jumps, it would just be smashes and crashes and damage all over the place. That's so pedestrian. So
I don't like this art form. Anyways, my ranking still stands on it. You can try and defend it next week.
This is the second time you've been to it. Anyways, okay.
Go ahead, Jaron.
My week was a mix of eventful and like eventful good and eventful bad. I went and I realized that the clothes that I have, and this comes from like going out and doing more travel lately, especially with you guys. I have like the same clothes, and Jordan constantly mentions, how many of those Nikon red shirts do you have? And I'm like, well, the answer is I have one, but I wash it and I wear it frequently because it's comfortable. Well, while we were at Apple Park, I bought a couple more shirts that I liked, like the one I'm wearing today. I have another one I'll probably wear next week. And then this past weekend, I went to Muji in Portland, and I bought entirely new pants. So I'm like, I have a whole new set of pants.
Are you going to just stand up right now? Like stand on your chair?
Am I wearing your
Mujis
right now?
I am
wearing a pair of Mujis. They're
Show us your Mujis. Don't rip your headphones
out. It's hard to say.
Don't pull your headphones out.
I can't. You can't really see them.
Now take them off.
No, they're called Easy Pants. They're denim. And then I've like two like large, they're almost parachute-y in design because that's what's like in right now.
Japanese style.
Yeah, that are like cargo pants that are made of cotton that I find to be incredibly comfortable. Then I got some more shirts and stuff. So that was great. Highlights, lowlights. On Sunday night, maybe Monday night. I was playing video games. Right here. Yeah, because you guys I told you about it. Yeah. I was playing video games right here. My wife comes in and says, I hear dripping. That's not good. So I go poking around and I also hear dripping. And I start tearing apart the basement. And then I can even hear a little bit of water moving. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be bad. And then I look between like this wall and like the post and the chimney and then like the water heater and then the actual like our whole HVAC system is all on the other side of this wall. I look behind there with a flashlight and I can see a wet post. I'm like, that's bad. Had to come in here. Our hot water intake line had sprung a leak because it's made of copper and it was touching something, and you're not supposed to have copper touch something because it corrodes real easily. Yeah. Well, it corroded and they had
and your house is ancient. That too.
Yeah, except that this piping was probably put in during a questionable renovation of this basement done by a previous owner, because you don't do this with copper if you know what you're doing. At any rate, it was replaced and fixed and put together, and that was all day yesterday, which is why we didn't record the podcast yesterday, but that was great for Jordan because he needed the time anyway. So that's what I've been doing. My plumbing is fixed, and there was no major damage. It
didn't cost you anything, right?
Nice.
No, it did.
Yeah.
It did. It cost me something. Yeah. I have a really powerful dehumidifier in there right now, sucking the water out of the walls. It's doing I dumped a gallon out today, which is a mixture of from the air and also in the space.
And I would categorize Portland in general as moist.
Yeah, and it rained yesterday. Yeah. So that's probably a lot of where that comes from. But I'm fairly certain that I can mitigate any mold. And it wasn't like heavy. It was like a really fine mist that was coming out. And then it was like attaching to the pipe and then dripping down. So it wasn't a huge amount.
I'm glad you're okay.
But things are fine. And with that, we can get to tech support. And I sure hope we can get through some of these because we have so many. And I'm so sorry, everyone. But we're going to do our best. So the first one is a speak pipe from Michael Cox. Let's listen in.
Hey, fellas. Michael here in Vancouver. I'd like to know if you could do a part of a podcast on fixed lens cameras. Fujifilm's coming out with a fixed lens GFX. You've got the Leica Q3. And I don't know why manufacturers are going towards these, but evidently they're popular. In fact, as a GFX 50S2 owner, I would be interested for travel purposes primarily in a fixed lens GFX if it was 100 megapixel.
So, Michael, I hope it's Vancouver, British Columbia, although Vancouver, Washington's fine too. So
Just north of me.
Yeah, fixed lens GFX. That's a rumor, by the way. I mean, there's no fact on that, no statement on that.
Pre-release fact.
Just pre-release fact.
It's a pre-release fact, yeah.
For me, having a fixed lens camera, I'd want it to be compact. And I don't think you're going to save much space with a fixed lens GFX, as opposed to just having a nice prime lens on it. So I personally would be in the camp of not wanting this. I think, you're already looking at a fairly large format physically. So what's the big deal of having, a small prime lens on there? If you want to just go out with one lens, I'd still like to have the flexibility on such an expensive system to then be able to put other lenses on there, personally. That's
I think it depends on how much we're giving up having that bayonet mount. I mean, we've seen with the Leica Q series, that 28 millimeter f1.7, it's wide, it's stupid bright, it's incredibly sharp. If they could pull off an extremely bright mid-wide angle that couldn't be done with a bayonet mount, then that suddenly makes it a lot more valid for me. Where if they're just going to drop on something like their 43 millimeter 2.8 in a fixed lens camera, then no, I don't want it.
Haven't we already seen a fixed lens medium format camera that Chris hated?
In the film days, nothing digital that
Are you certain? I'm fairly certain you guys reviewed a Phase 1 fixed lens camera last year.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
did.
right.
That happened. Wow.
I totally forgot about that.
You just deleted that from your memory. Both of you.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I repressed trauma and...
Look, the big thing is the GFX 50R, the rangefinder style, I don't think they're following up with that design. So basically, if you want a GFX, they're big, chunky DSLR styled things. So it might make sense to do a fixed lens and bring back kind of that Texas Leica sort of design. Maybe. I wouldn't grab one, but I mean, anything fixed lens at this point, I think people will be like, I can't get an X106. I might as well get a $10,000. I can't get a Q3. Q3s are back ordered for ever.
You may as well just buy a Bessa. Just get a Bessa.
Get a Bessa. But now that you remind me of the Phase 1, I mean, that was one of the limitations. It's like, it didn't really save that much space. So, I mean, I'd want the flexibility of interchangeable lenses.
I think we're going to dip back into this is on the schedule as well. We might bring a guest in who is passionate about fixed lens cameras for a more extended talk. So stay tuned for that.
All right, next one is another speak pipe, Tom from North Carolina.
Hi guys, it's Tom from North Carolina again. I have a question for Jordan and Jaron about video, since I am a photographer with very limited video knowledge. My wife and I are going to have a wedding vows renewal, just a very small ceremony in our backyard. And I want to shoot video from a tripod. So I'd like to share my plan with you and see what your thoughts and advice are. I'll have my Olympus EM1 Mark III plus a 12-40 2.8 Pro and also an Insta360 Go 3 somewhere else for a second angle with a power bank. I'll use a DJI mic to record our voices during the vows, but other than that, I think just ambient sound from the camera. So I am thinking of getting the Rode Stereo Video Mic Pro right coat that you suggested in another podcast. What's your thoughts on that? And also, would that serve better on camera or with the DJI mic via the 3.5mm jack? Although that would give me basically just one audio source. Should I get a fake battery to run an external power cord for the EM1 Mark III? And lastly, suggestion for straight out of camera video settings with the Olympus would be also very, very welcome. Thank you, and sorry for the long post.
All right, so here is what I would do. I'm going to just keep it nice and short. If you have a DJI mic, get the DJI mic as close to where the ceremony itself is going to take place. Don't put it on one particular person. This is my big piece. Don't put it on a groom. Like if you're doing a renewal, don't put it on one person. Put it in the middle where they're going to be around. Hide it by flowers or something like that. The closer you can get a microphone, the better the sound is going to be. If you have a stereo mic attached to the camera quite a ways back, you're just going to get as much audience and environment environmental sound as possible. It's going to sound great because that's a very good microphone, but it's terrible for rejecting sounds that you don't want. Where that mic might be good is the same thing. Get it really, really close to everybody, slap it right in the middle behind a bouquet. It's going to sound nice because it's close to your subject. And you could even run that, just plug it right into the DJI mic if you're going to invest in that. But I would probably just throw the DJI up as close as possible.
You know what I'm thinking
what do you
on
think?
that note, actually, depending on what your plan is for your efficient, if they have a folder or something in front of them that's going to lean, if you stick that right on the binding of that folder, it'll place it pretty much equidistant from all three of you, both the efficient, you, and whoever you're marrying. And that will, I don't know.
Marrying again.
Marrying again. Yeah, that should be a good place to stick it, although you can't necessarily do that with the Rode stereo video mic because that boy big.
Yeah.
And it's not going to hang out there. That's my feedback. Continue,
The
Jordan.
DJI does have the little magnetic attachment, which would be absolutely perfect for that. Just stick it in between two pieces of paper. And you're golden. As far as the battery, use an external battery. Plug that camera in. It's going to conk out. On those OMs, I find you get about just over an hour of runtime with that battery. So as a safety net, I always recommend doing that. When we did our podcast at Adobe, we had, I think, 3 batteries with a bunch of cables running off it, so we didn't even have to think about that. It's a good idea. In terms of the profiles, just use their flat profile. It'll give you a little bit of flexibility in grading, but it's also not something that's going to look absolutely terrible if you're not familiar with it. Just raise the shadows, you can play with the shadows and highlights a tiny little bit, and it'll give you a bit more flexibility without mucking around with any more advanced color profiles. And it'll be easy to match it to the 360, which is quite punchy straight out of camera. I wouldn't try matching log files.
I have nothing to add to what Jordan said other than what I already did. So
Good luck.
listen to him.
Good luck,
He's
Tom.
smart.
Good luck.
All right, next one is a speak pipe from Eddie Chaz.
Hey, PetaPixel fam. Love the podcast. Listen to it I look forward to it. I need it. I need it in my life. I'm loving it. Keep it coming. Y'all actually helped me out with a previous question. I ended up upgrading my wide-angle Tamron lens, Sony lens, to a Sony GM2 lens. Love it. Thank you so much. New question for y'all. 24-70 Sigma versus version 2 versus 24-70 GM2. I saw your video, loved it. The comparison was the GM1. Just wanted to know what your thoughts on the versus the GM2. I generally want to use it for conventions and concerts that I'm going to be shooting, which brings us to my next question about white balance for video for concerts. Can't really seem to be getting a unilateral consensus on white balance. I've shot the concert before. Everyone comes out green, and it's a mess. And I was just hoping you can help me out with that. Love it. The podcast, keep it coming. I need it. Bye.
So Eddie, thank you so much. Really appreciate the love.
Love
Yeah,
the speak
thank
pipe.
you. We love it. Love you, fam. So between the two lenses, so we compared the Sigma 24-70, which is a great lens, the Art series, against the original GM, which is honestly not good. But the new GM is quite a bit better. So I'd go ahead and say the Sony 24-70 version 2 is a near perfect lens. Fantastic optically, compact, beautifully well made, but expensive. So I would say the Sigma doesn't quite get you to the standard the 24-70 GM2 does, especially with wide open performance. The G Master is maybe a little bit better. Yeah, at 2.8, the corners are better and stuff, fast focusing. But the Sigma is still a very good lens and probably better bang for the buck just because that GM is so expensive. But you can't beat the Sony. The new 28-105 might be interesting if you do like that sort of longer telephoto distance. It is quite sharp at 2.8, the Sigma 28-105 that we just reviewed. So I would also consider that. The price is going to be less. You're going to miss out a bit of wide angle, but you'll get more of that telephoto coverage. The bokeh is not my favorite, but it is sharp at 2.8.
Looking at the white balance thing, what I always do is I start at daylight when I first set up and see if roughly what I'm seeing from the stage lights is that matching what my eyes do. I find your main fill lights in concert is now generally daylight balanced, but if it still looks odd, I just work my way through all of the presets. What you absolutely don't want to do is use any form of auto white balance because those stage lights are going to be screwing up constantly. It'll get too much red. Try and add a bunch of blue to it. It looks looks terrible. So choose a base white balance, just leave it there and let the stage lights do what the stage lights will do. And sometimes they will clip color channels. A lot of your stage lights aren't full spectrum lights, and that's just the nature of shooting live music. You just kind of have to roll with the punches.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you, Eddie.
Next one is a multi-question email from Maxwell Rorig. The last name is spelled so cool, and I bet this name sounds like I just like this. This sounds almost Viking to me. I love it.
It's his new D&D character's name, by the way.
Rorig. Oh,
yeah, that's
excellent.
what's happening.
Hello, Chris, Jordan, and Jaron. Would you ever consider an episode where you critique users' submitted photos? It'd make for awful radio, but it's a good. Well, we just did LUTs.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
Don't put it past
The bar's
us.
low for listenership.
But it's a good way to get folks to watch the show on YouTube. So, answer that. Would you consider doing that? I've seen, like, back when I was at F-Stoppers, Lee Morris was doing that. I don't know if they're still doing it now, but
Yeah, they're still doing it.
Okay.
And the Northrops did it for a very long time.
Yeah, a lot
Their
of people are doing
live
it.
show was largely critiques. That's a tough. I mean, I would certainly. It would just be me expressing the odd opinion. I like this format, talking about news and things like that more. But I think maybe we could do like a quarterly review. Might be kind of fun. It's something we'll discuss for sure. I do want to point out. I was on Max's previous podcast, BS with Friends, about your movie Blind Sides, and talked about Mother. For a good couple of hours, and it's one of my favorite podcasts I've ever recorded. Had an absolutely great time, and that podcast seems to be gone, scraped from the internet forever. I was going to try and look it up so I could put it in the description. Mother is an insane movie. It was a very interesting conversation, and I'm annoyed that it's gone, and I'm sorry that your podcast isn't running now, Max.
He said here,
that was
quick
great.
note. One of the best things Jordan ever recorded was a podcast with Max about Mother. When was this,
I put that note in myself just to remind myself when this came up that I had a blast doing that podcast. So probably would have been a couple of years ago now. So I don't know if anyone's got that file, spread it all on the dark web or something. But anyways, Max, I had a great time on your show.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, he didn't say that. You said that, but Okay.
Yeah, I'll be more clear next time.
Other stuff he said.
I like confusing Jaron.
Yeah, you do love it because I go text only. Other things he said. He said, Jaron, aside from Destiny, what are you all playing these days? So he has a question for all three of us. This is mine. I am not playing Destiny as much lately because the game is, I think, basically, for me, over. It's like they finished the story. I'm good. So I've been playing. I went back to Apex Legends for my PvP fix, and I'm playing Space Marine 2 right now, Warhammer 40K. That one is fun. I'm also playing Cyberpunk 2077 on my PC. I haven't played that in a little bit because I've been playing those other two games, and also I've been out of town with these two guys. Jordan, his question for you is, to you, what is the best looking from a cinema perspective bad movie? Leipzig, Children of Men to Cat.
No, that's me. I was making notes.
Why would you do that?
So I remembered.
Make them in your own sheet.
All right.
So I just go ahead and spoiled it. There you go,
did.
Jordan.
Okay, so no, you didn't, because one of my favorite DPs in the world is Manuel Lubezki, known as Chivo. He was the DP on like Children of Men, and a bunch of beautiful films. Gravity is another one that he won Best Cinematographer for, and along with those movies, he was the DP on The Cat in the Hat. One of the worst movies ever made. I was at my nephews and nieces were watching it when I was over at one of my siblings' houses. It is nightmare fuel, one of the worst movies ever made. I haven't watched this whole movie, but I was like, man, this camera is moving a lot, and there's a lot of interesting wide angles and beautiful light. And oh, God, Lubezki shot this in complete piece of trash. So that is my vote. Best looking bad movie.
And then Chris, you know what? I'm going to apologize. Next time you put notes in our show, Jordan, you have
I'll
to
make
put
them
in
green
big,
or something.
All caps. Jordan for Jordan only. That way, Jaron doesn't read it live. Last one is from Chris. I would like you to give a gift. 2 minutes of uninterrupted time to talk about fly fishing. I like that you want him to do that.
That's very nice.
We have 2 minutes. We already are pretty late in the show. 2 minutes dedicated to him talking about something that'll put Jordan to sleep. I don't know.
Okay, no, I got my phone here. We got a lot of comments on the iPhone video. I'll just do some scrubbing here.
I'm just going to answer the other two questions. You know what? I haven't, fly fishing. I'm not going to talk about for 2 minutes. But I've been playing U-Boat And actually, it's been really great. So U-Boat has just come out in full release, and it's like watching the movie Dust Boat, but you're playing a game, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's really good.
Is it claustrophobic?
Sorry? Claustrophobic. Yes, it's fantastic. And then
simulator of a submarine from the World War II era? Is that
it's so good. Yes. And then Dust Boat is Dust Boat's a good example of an interesting movie from Wolfgang Petersen where it's like one of his first big movies and it's beautifully shot. And then I would say a lot of Wolfgang Petersen's other movies, maybe not great movies, not like Dust Boat, but still beautifully shot in most cases.
Perfect Storm's a romp.
Perfect Storm is a romp. I like Perfect Storm, but some of it's not so good. Yeah. But I'm not going to talk about fly fishing in 2 minutes because nobody wants to hear it, Jordan. I'm surprised there isn't a note in here that says, quick note, don't let Chris talk about fly fishing for 2 minutes. I'm shocked there isn't that in there. All right.
Thank you, Maxwell, for that. And I apologize for mixing up Jordan's brain notes with your
apologize as well. I'm sorry I made it weird, guys.
All right. So this next one is an email from Ben. Hi, big fan of the channel, podcast, and the site. Woohoo! And the site. As an Olympus shooter, I have a question for the podcast regarding the state of OM System, though I appreciate their sponsor and it might be awkward to answer. Not awkward at all. I recently had a promotion from OM System emailed to me for the combo of the OM1 with a 12-100 f4 IS Pro, and it caught my eye as an offer at 1,719 British pounds sterling. This is actually cheaper than when you can buy this combo secondhand on sites like MPB, where there's a like new condition that would be 1,928 British pounds sterling. Given that OM System has reduced their prices so much and seems to have such drastic offers on a regular basis, what does this say as a state of them as a company? Is this a bad sign for any future plans they might have? Before you two answer, I will say that basically for the entire time I've been in this industry, Olympus and OM System now have been doing this. This is just like what they do. So that's my impression. I don't think it says anything.
Yeah, I think it's just a marketing strategy, right? And trying to get people into the system and using the products. I love the 12-100, by the way. In fact, that combo, the OM1 with 12-100 f4, that's one of my most used combos. So highly recommend it. If you can get it for that price, do it. I mean, it's a good deal. It's nice that with prices going so crazy on APS and full frame that you can get good deals on Micro Four Thirds. So no, I think it's just enjoy it. But as Jaron says, they've always done that.
I think it's worth pointing out that the OM1 is now a Mark II version that says OM System on it. I think they're also trying to clear out a lot of the Olympus branded stuff. So yeah, it's an older model. That lens is also an Olympus branded model. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see a 12-100 version 2, and we already have an OM1 version 2 available.
Yeah. So just enjoy it.
All right. Next one is an email from Wolfgang.
The director of Das Boot and the Perfect Storm?
Das Boot, Wolfgang.
I don't think so. Dear PetaPixel team, I'm really glad to and do appreciate that you continue with your podcasts, which are educational and entertaining at the same time. Well, you are welcome. I do understand that my question might cause frustration for Jordan, and I'm sorry for this, but I will pose the question nonetheless.
It's been a long
Uninhibited.
week. Wolfgang, come on.
As a hobbyist photographer, I am focusing on still images exclusively. I am not interested in videography. When considering a new camera for purchase, I feel like I'm forced to pay for video camera features to obtain a decent state-of-the-art technical standard for capturing still images. I am invested in and do love the Nikon Z system, fancying the Z6 III. Why do I... Z6 III. My brain just does that.
Yes, but one of us. One of us.
But do not think that the major brands differ much in that regard. Why is that camera manufacturers seem to favor hybrids? Are there technical synergies in the production of a hybrid camera which can be lifted, apart from the image sensor, which obviously is used for both still images and video? Or is this driven by consumers in the market? Would it make sense to all manufacturers, at any of them, to put a still images camera out there? Thanks for your competent insights, Wolfgang.
Wolfgang, have I got a Hasselblad camera for you? Okay,
That's right.
Yeah. They eschew the video say, look, I mean, this is
M11D as well.
This is a common question and a common complaint. People feel like, oh, we're getting charged for all these video features. But talking to many manufacturers, it's if you want to look at it as like a byproduct of making the camera that, for stills that it also does video, you can look at it that way. I mean, once you start doing electric viewfinders and you have that video feed going, you're pulling frames off of the sensor constantly. Why not make it video? So they do it because it's probably honestly actually cheaper for not only them but for you to include it. Like,
I'll mention this. I won't say who said it because I'm sure it's off the record. But we were talking to a manufacturer recently, and this sort of came up, and they were like, even if we were to remove those features, it wouldn't make the camera cost less.
No,
exactly.
It's the same amount of work regardless.
Yeah. So it's just logical to do it for both. Obviously, then from a marketing standpoint, why not make a camera that can appeal to different crowds, both videographers and photographers? And there are a lot of people who are now doing both. I mean, that is a growing market. Video is a growing market, so it just makes sense. You're not getting charged more for it. Enjoy it or ignore it. But I don't think a manufacturer is going to make a stills only just for the marketing purpose of targeting customers that don't want video on their cameras.
Yeah, Hasselblad doesn't have video in there simply because when they did put it in, it was so
bad.
atrociously terrible that no one was going to use it, and it was embarrassing, so they got rid of it.
I do want to say, if you check, just search DP Review video cameras on mirrorless, or video features on mirrorless cameras. Past and future guest Richard Butler wrote a banging article explaining exactly why, if they pull video out, your cameras are going to be worse and they're going to be more expensive. If you look at the cameras that only offer stills shooting, they are all extremely expensive because they're catering to a very small market. That is the case with all manufacturers, which is why most choose not to offer it.
All right. I am looking at how much time we have left, so I'm moving a couple of these to next week, but there is a couple more I want to do. One of them is show and tell, which is always exciting. Thomas Z emailed us and said, "Dear PetaPixel team, a few days ago, I took a couple of pictures of a hawk moth in the garden. For the shooting, I was using a Sony A1 with a Sony 600mm f4 telelens at f6.3 and set to 1/4000th of a second. After processing with Topaz AI plugin in Lightroom Classic, both of them in the latest version, I have observed a square pattern behind the white flower and was really puzzled because such a pattern does not exist in the garden or on my lens. After an even closer look, the pattern of this square ghosting resembles to me a little bit like a sensor. Of course, I cannot imagine that a sensor reflection through the small opening of an f6.3 aperture could make it into the lens to be photographed, or could it? I can see this pattern in all of the pictures taken in the garden during this time of day. FYI and cross-checking, I have attached the raw image. So here we go. I'm showing it to all of y'all. The Adobe Lightroom denoised image and the Topaz denoised image. So I got both of them in here. Could you please help me bring some light into this mystery? So these aren't the raw files I'm showing you because I can't show raw in video. So I did lightly process these to make it so you could actually see the square. Due to the size of the image, you couldn't send him as attachment with sending you the link file. We transfer, got him. Cool. He wants to know what's going on here. I don't know.
Okay, so just for context, it seems like the raw file though does also have this pattern.
Yes, it's in there. Yeah.
It wasn't just that Topaz brought this out, or that's a
Correct.
Topaz thing.
I can confirm it's in the raw file. I processed it to make this happen. So, but all I did was change the brightness and whatnot so that the square was more visible, so that it was easier to see. But it is definitely there.
I mean, it's a mystery. Like, it's interesting that it's focused around the blown highlights. Sensor reflections, I mean, they're generally not going to be this in focus per se with like a fairly clean square edge like that. It's usually going to be like a rainbow pattern, which bright highlights can sometimes bring out, although usually we're talking like a really bright specular source like the sun or a bright street light. So I don't know. It's a mystery. Maybe our audience knows.
Yeah, that's the thing. I do think it's a sensor reflection. I would just love to know if other people have experienced it. This is something I haven't seen, especially with telephoto lenses, but we've got this big audience of very opinionated people. So if you've seen this before, let us know in the comments. We are going to go back to this great mystery next week or the week after that, whenever we have a satisfactory
answer. But I mean,
answer.
It's strange too. Like it's not conforming to a rectangle. It's like a step stair pattern that surrounds the white highlights. But then on the right side of the flower, there's parts of it where there isn't that reflection, maybe because of that light green patch against, I don't know. It clearly, like, it's not just a big rectangle. It's like a step stair pattern.
All right, so we're literally asking you guys to pixel peep.
Yeah. I don't know.
I will put this file on our PetaPixel servers so you can actually grab it and take a look at it. I will do my best. If I can't fit the raw on there, it'll be a processed JPEG. But Let me know.
What you think.
We're going to go
wanna know.
straight up DP review forums on this thing. You get ready. It's going to be annoying. Here we go.
All right. That is all we have time for in the comments and tech support stuff. So we're going to finish with the feel-good story of the week. Woo! And that is a photographer has managed to nab a shot of a New Britain goshawk.
Goshawk.
Goshawk. Goshawk. A bird thought lost and is not. Geez, the way you just rolled your eyes at me was top tier. You looked genuinely upset, like a last absolute straw.
This is his last podcast.
This bird was thought lost. I've only ever seen it like written. I've never heard it said. It's like biopic.
That's good. That means you're well read.
Yeah.
Anyway, a bird thought lost has not been seen in the last 55 years. It wasn't thought to be extinct, but there had been no visibility to it, so it was placed into vulnerable because there was no proof on either way. But it lives, and prior to this, it has never actually ever been photographed. So not only was it proven to still be around, the first ever photo was captured of it.
Very cool. And a beautiful bird in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah,
on the island of New Britain.
It's a great surprise.
You know what's better than when things are extinct is when they're still alive. So I think this is great news.
There you go. And not only that, but I mean, it was shot on New Britain Island in Papua New Guinea, and it's the New Britain goshawk. So I assume like it's endemic to that island. So it's still in its original place too. So very, very cool. There you go.
It was shot last March by Fiji-based wildlife photographer Tom Virus. And it was recently confirmed, and that's why we're publishing it now, because it was shot in March, but went through a lot of processing to make sure that it was the bird. Virus says, it was such a great surprise to hear that this photo seems to be the first ever of this, quote, lost species. It is wonderful to see how conservation photography can help in safeguarding areas by documenting the existing biodiversity, and also a good reminder of how important visual storytelling is.
So, guys, last question. For his camera settings, how many FIPS do you think he was using to capture that bilf?
We're not going to get a better ending, so we should just shut it down, Jaron.
Oh man, if he keeps saying FIPS, I'm gonna have to put it on a shirt.
You know what? It's mine now. I'm owning
the FIPS are real.
FIPS are real.
Stop trying to make fetch a thing. Fetch isn't a thing.
Because I hate saying FPS or frames per second. It's so annoying. So FIPS. It's
clearly someone agrees with you. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you all next week. Have a good one.
Bye.